It's such an interesting tale, but I have to ask one quick question.
Sure.
Is the audio going?
Why do you give your characters their birth date?
Well, early on, when a character births out its name, because at some point the name comes to me, but it feels like they've declared it to some degree. Like that's the notion I'm trying to feel in my gut when something is said. I'll choose a random birth date out of the sky. I'll look up all the facts, all the zodiac, all the horoscope stuff I can find about this particular day. And my belief is the reason we read horoscopes and zodiac and say that it's similar to ourselves is because I think we are that zodiac sign in the womb, and then elements of your childhood alters parts of that zodiac sign, which gives you billions of different personalities because we all live different backgrounds and little tiny things start to shift even though we have all these similarities. So I'll look up a character's birth chart and I'll begin to decide, yeah, but this character was abused, or this character went through this, and so that would alter this, and that would alter that. And at some point, the character will just start to come to life, and I'll forget about it. And they'll just kind of find their footing, hopefully, and you'll be able to follow that path.
So in clowning, what were the two leads' birthdays?
Well, you know, clowning is an interesting tale because here's how clowning came about. It's a little different. My best friend, producing partner, Jonathan Gallardo, he told me that his girlfriend was pregnant. Paige is her name. And they're pregnant with their first baby. So immediately, I know I want to make my friend a little film. I'm thinking maybe like a little documentary, taking a documentary subject, putting it into a narrative structure, maybe filming them while she's pregnant, you know. So I have that in my head. I'm thinking about that as a movie. I go to bed and I have a dream. And in the dream, you know when you come to in the middle of a dream and you already know what's been happening? I come to in the middle of this dream and I'm driving through the desert. And I know in my head that there's something in the back of the van that I had nothing to do with, but everyone's after me because of this thing. So I start to feel that tension and that stress. And as it begins to bubble, I suddenly hear a giggle to my right. And I look over and I see this female clown. And it makes me wince in fear. And when I do this, I suddenly see that I'm wearing a clown outfit. And I look in the mirror and I see paint. And I woke up from a dream and said, that mixed with my friend's real life is a neo-noir crime film I've never seen. And in his real life, he was making lip balm called Mama Earth. And I always have a stick of lip balm called Mama Earth because he's got his own company. And I put it in the movie, so he had to give me lip balm for life for free. So it's not product placement. You don't need to buy Mama Earth.
But that's his job, right? And then he gets into
then he becomes a clown for hire, and before you know it, he's wanted for murder and trying to prove his innocence.
So you had never had a job as a some in LA. There's all these princess parties and these different things where you dress as different.
No, but my grandma Lil, she loved clowns. Her whole house was covered in clown paintings and clown sculptures, and I always wanted to do a movie with clowns that wasn't about clowns. And I like the idea that clowns are so embedded in the horror genre today, and I wanted this movie to be a crime romance film and just know that when they watch it, they're going to be thinking this feeling. There's all this horror feeling in the picture, but it's just because of where clowns are today in our society. But the film itself is not a scary movie.
Sure. And some of the crime stories that have happened with individuals who dressed as clowns, right?
Yeah.
And so do these two characters, let's say the male clown and the female clown, do they have birthdays, and what birthdays are those?
Well, so the male clown, and Milo is his name in clowning, that's closer to my friend. So that was more based on Jonathan Gallardo and his reality. So there wasn't necessarily a birthday for that particular character. Now, Pele, I didn't pick a specific date. I just knew she was an Aries. I knew that she was going to have this dominance about who she is. And I knew that she would be an Aries sun with a rising Taurus. And so then I started to read about those two zodiac signs early on. And I began to learn more about who she is, and then she woke up pretty fast. So there wasn't a particular birth date for that one. That was more of a broad stroke. But that's because that character has a lot more going on than what you realize in the beginning. So she was built differently. But most characters, I'll give, that's a way I'll give an actor some direction early on, is I'll give them a particular birth date and their horoscope and start feeding them stuff every week just to get their minds, like I'll be like, here's your horoscope today and here's how your character feels about that based on his or her life. And so it'd be kind of some ways that we start talking about it. And eventually they take that over too. And eventually I stop doing that and the actor will just start doing it.
So sounds like it's Pele's way or the highway, and she's never wrong.
That should be the tagline. That should be the tagline.
How does this deep understanding of the character help you develop the story?
The character is the story. So unless your film is plot driven and say it's Friday the 13th, and perhaps in that picture, the characters being regular teenage, early 20s people, then maybe their characters aren't necessarily driving that tale. But in general, the more you understand about your character, the more you comprehend it, the more they begin to take over the story. They begin to make choices. And if they're making choices, then that's playable actions that actors can embody. And a lot of times there's, a lot of films that are put together where actors don't have playable direction coming out of the screenplay because plot's happening to them when really the character plot should be happening because of them. So I think at the end of the day, if there's a moment you're writing something and you don't have a deep understanding of the character, then you're probably writing too prematurely. You probably need to take a second and start writing in that character's diary. Because why tell the story about, let's say, Scarface with Al Pacino? Imagine if that character wasn't as developed as who he became. Well, the movie Scarface is Scarface because the character that he plays is that psychopath that builds up into having this huge momentum, this monumental moment at the end. But that's all coming from character. So if you're sitting down to write that story and you don't know who that character is, or you're not fully alive with that individual, then they can't make choices. And then in my opinion, then maybe the story could die or fall flat, be boring.
Do you think horror dictates you said that the story is dictated by the character, but is that always true with horror films?
Well, in the horror realm, you have a lot of different types of genres, subgenres in that realm. Like for instance, The Shining. That is a story very driven on character choice and character needs that lead them into that realm, right? But if you look at Nightmare on Elm Street versus Friday the 13th, let's say, as two comparisons of similar genres even, Nightmare on Elm Street, you actually have kids that have more developed, their characteristics are more developed in Nightmare on Elm Street to where they actually have goals and they have things that they're trying to conquer in their personal lives with their with their relationships amongst each other. Where Friday the 13th, they're mainly just hooking up and then getting slaughtered. With all of that said, what I'm hoping to bring into the horror genre is a thematic idea. For instance, in my film Bickle that we're going to go into making, the theme of the movie is how far would you go for your family? And what I love about that is the theme in horror films doesn't generally translate into the realm of from the characters who are innocent and getting injured throughout the piece. They might have a thematic idea attached to them, but it doesn't usually go to the killers. Usually the killers are these mindless people just attacking. In this film, Bickle, what I'm excited about is the thematic idea of how far would you go for your family even translates over into their world, where the two killers in the film, they are family and they're trying to protect each other. So hopefully we go into this Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of genre and kind of turn it on its head a little bit.
Sure, and Carrie, that was somewhat similar in that she necessarily wasn't the bad guy in the beginning, but in the end, she becomes that as a result of what happened.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, it's driven by her story, but.
Well, did Carrie ever become the bad guy, though?
I don't think she was, but.
Yeah, I mean, no. Carrie, that particular picture is really about. Wouldn't you say that Carrie is more about a young woman becoming, or a girl becoming a woman and maturing into adulthood and wondering the differences about her body and trying to figure out grounding herself in her reality and trying to find her place amongst her peers. And then really it went into the horror genre because this is the worst it could be. You know, this is like the way that they treat it, like that opening sequence in the shower is the worst thing that can happen to you in that smaller microscope,
Sure.
you know, of being a teenager. Like,
Oh, yeah.
that is the worst thing that can happen to you. Being stuck in that shower, having your period, and everybody being like, oh my gosh, look at her.
Right.
You know, so it's an interesting movie. I think it's there's so much there. Brian De Palma was a master. It's interesting to bring up Carrie and Scarface all in the same.
Yeah. And then he did Blowout.
Oh, John Travolta.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a filmmaker, sort of. He's
Yeah.
a filmmaker in the film, and.
Oh no, I mean sound designer. I love the way, like the sequences. First off, the way that Brian De Palma always used the split diopter, and he would have different parts of the frame in focus and like do these split screens, like in his movie Sisters. This amazing split screen sequence where someone's being murdered and the other person ends up seeing them, and I don't know. He's such a master at the split screen and really using the frame in those kind of ways, and also moving the camera, I suppose, too, because he moved the camera a whole lot of crane shots and very complicated stuff.
Right.
There's a great documentary on Brian De Palma. Everybody should go see it.
Oh, what's it called?
I think it's called De Palma, I believe.
Okay.
I think it's on Netflix.
Oh, great. Yeah, I'll have to check it out. Yeah, I saw the making of Carrie, and I'm trying to think of what, there was another one behind the scenes I saw. But yeah, I'll have to check that one out. That's good.
Like, you know, like The Exorcist. The Exorcist is a great film because it's about a little girl dealing with the fact that her parents are divorced. And it's really about a little girl coming to terms with the fact that she doesn't have her father figure anymore. And I think that's what tugs at our heart so deeply. And then she becomes possessed. And then we're not in a scary movie, we're in a drama. And I think that that's where the departure is between certain scary movies and other ones that are more a little, but they're all great though in their own ways.